Hey, good morning. My name's Jim Hanna. I'm with Joe Hanna. We're the two brothers of Hanna Brothers Catering. Thanks for joining us for the podcast today. We're going to talk a little bit about crafting culinary experiences and elevating the on-set dining experience. On this particular topic, I think it's probably a good idea to talk about the role food plays in setting the tone on the set, right? So I've been on several shows where they were low budget as far as overall budget spend, but the production manager said, "Listen, I've tried to squeeze water out of everybody, as far as their rates go, and I'm trying to make this movie as cheap as I can because it's just the budget I have. But at the very least I can do is make sure they have a great lunch and get fed at a high level." And I will tell you that when that happens, the crew knows it and they appreciate it. So you can, we all go grocery shopping every day. We all know kind of what proteins are expensive and what proteins are not as expensive. And when you go to have lunch and you see food that's at the higher end of the spectrum and prepared well, you're appreciated, right? And I've seen it set the tone on the set, and several producers I've worked with have said, the Army marches on its stomach, so we need to make sure they're taken care of. But have you also seen that similar vibe, when you get out on set and that the meal that you start them off with at breakfast and or lunch is really going to, set the tone for the day?
Absolutely. Specifically, it's really helpful if you speak with the production manager in the beginning on exactly what his needs are. And I'll talk about that for a minute. So most of the time for breakfast, it's just quick and fast. Let me have a breakfast burrito. Let me have an omelet. Let me have a breakfast sandwich. I want to get them back to work. I want to make sure they have something to eat for breakfast, but more than likely, I want to get them back to work. So don't go setting up a bunch of tables and chairs and have them sitting down. It's a walking meal, and I want them to come over here and grab. No, some of the other productions will say, listen, when they come in, I want them to be able to sit down and talk, and the best thing for them to do is get their coffee and get their breakfast and sit down and talk about what they're going to be doing today. So understanding the ask from the production and
what is their expectation,
exactly.
Right? And making sure the two are aligned with what the caterer is planning on doing versus what the expectation is. And that comes by communicating. Yeah.
Yes.
I think that leads into sort of the next thought I had, which was matching expectations from both sides, both what the caterer plans on doing and what production is expecting. So as a result of COVID, as a result of different budget levels, as a result of, different levels of showmanship within the catering industry, there's a lot of different ways to feed a crew, right? And by that, I mean, it used to be back when you first got started, Joe, probably 30 years ago, 35 years ago, it was the crew members would typically walk up to the mobile kitchen and get their breakfast and lunch handed to them right through the window, right?
Yes.
So there'd be a line of folks. They'd walk up to the service window that was cut into the truck, and they would, tell the chef what they wanted. The chef would build their plate and hand them a plate. They would walk away and have their lunch. That has morphed over the years for a lot of reasons, speed being one of them, probably the biggest negative related to servicing from the window of a truck was that it took a long time to get your crew fed. So you were one of the innovators with going to just straight buffet style, where it was a double-sided buffet, chafing racks were out, and people could walk down the line and look at, a full salad bar, look in chafing racks and serve themselves. And it went from having to wait in line for, 15, 20 minutes to being able to serve yourself a meal in 2 minutes, right? So that was one of the big sort of shifts in sort of the way production crews get fed. It has continued to evolve over the years. We now have theme menus. We also have action stations. Some caterers out there are doing just strictly kind of action stations where you walk to lunch and you'll maybe see 5 different stations set up, and each one sort of is themed around a different a motif. So you might walk up and there'd be a salad station where you can go up and have a caterer build your salad and toss it right in front of you. A starch station where maybe you come up and there's different varieties of pastas and sauces. You might have proteins there available to you. A dessert station, vegetable station. You could be doing fish tacos in a station. It all kind of draws back to how production wants to be fed and what the expectation is. And each different of feeding them is really a different set of parameters with regard to how you price it out, right? So if you've got 5 different stations, you've got to have 5 different employees at each station, right? So that's going to be a little heavier on your labor. Whereas if you've got just a buffet line, you may be able to come back off the labor by 1 or 2 people. So I've already touched on it a little bit. I want you to touch on maybe any other variations that you've seen and possibly talk about some of the pros and cons with regard to each.
Okay, thank you. I would say one of the most impactful things is variety. So you don't want to go eat the same thing every day. You don't want it to look like the same thing every day. And if it's in the same place every day and it's the same thing every day, you're not really as excited about going.
When you say same thing, you mean presented in the same format every day. It's not that they're getting barbecue chicken every day. It's just that they're seeing 9 chafing racks set up and it's all in one line every single day. So even though the food's different, it kind of gives you the appearance of, hey, I'm eating at the same restaurant every day.
Exactly. So, the action stations, it's still, the action station is basically still chicken or steak or fish or seafood, but how do you present it? What are your sauces? What are your toppings? What is the theme? And you really try to stay close to home. So when you're in Georgia, it's a lot of Southern,
down home cooking, if you will.
Yeah, really.
Southern
Southern soul food.
There's a big
is what's going on in Georgia.
Yeah.
But if you set it up in stations, you have a barbecue station over here, you have a seafood station over here, and you have a pasta station over here. It gives you a different visual.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is also impacted by your labor costs. One of the things that I like to do, that we like to do, is create a menu up front, send it to production in the beginning for them to look at it. And a lot of times they'll say, this is perfect. This is exactly what we want. And sometimes they'll say, this is way too many choices. I don't want them thinking about all this stuff. I don't want them wondering where to go. I want to make it a little bit more streamlined so that it's that it's just a faster service. We don't want this many choices. And then sometimes they'll say, we don't want this fancy stuff. We want it to be very Southern and just, really home style cooking. So understanding the ask from the production, identifying the need, and then fulfilling that where you're giving them the variety so they're looking forward to coming to eating each day, although it is created by the same people, cooked by the same people, but it's with a different flair, a different theme, a different genre.
Yeah, and I think the key ingredient there is communication between the caterer and the production team and matching expectations.
Yeah.
Some production managers I talk to are happy to kind of go down that rabbit hole, if you will, and flush that out and really be thorough about it. And some are just like, you know what, Jim, just, you're the expert, you guys handle it. And we try to do it. But I think it's important for anybody on the production side listening to this to realize it's a give and take, right? So if you see the presentation and it's maybe not what you expected, pick up the phone call. We know that we are caterers, and we want to cater to production. We want you guys to have a pleasant experience at lunch. We're certainly appreciative of being on the crew with the rest of the team, and we want to make sure everybody's happy. So, and that comes by communicating. So I just want to encourage anybody on the production side to make sure they are talking to the caterer and relaying any expectations, especially if they're not, getting what they wanted to get. Talking about communicating and actually another sort of variation on what's possible as far as catering goes. Right now we're in the middle of negotiations for the labor unions, both the Teamsters and the IATSE Teamsters, or excuse me, the IATSE union. So both those unions are in negotiations with the producers, and hopefully those get resolved soon. But one of the deal points has to do with catering employees and if they are all Teamsters or not. Previously, just the chef was a Teamster. One of the negotiating points now is that all the people in the catering crew would be Teamsters. And what that's going to do is it's going to, if it does pass, it would then raise the cost of labor for the catering department. And I think that's going to play itself out one way or the other. But one of the things that it potentially could lead to is productions looking for an alternative to hiring a film caterer to have a dedicated truck and a dedicated crew out there with them on location. And one of the things that we do currently is drop-off catering from our commissary, specifically in Atlanta. But I could definitely see this being instead of just being a pre-production and post-production option for film crews that need catering. If you got a really tight budget, drop-off catering from a commissary, I think may now become a more viable option with the increased costs related to labor. So, because we do drop-off catering, for the listener out there, talk a little bit about how that might be different than traditional film catering, where I send a small team out to your physical location and they cook from a mobile kitchen. What does drop-off catering look like?
Okay, certainly. I'll talk about the pros and cons as it pertains to typical motion picture catering and drop-off motion picture catering. So, typical motion picture catering, you have to have a place to park the catering truck. You have to have a place to park the dining room, which is a pickup that pulls the trailer that has everything to set up the dining room, all the tables and chairs and buffets and chafing dishes and stuff. So you have to have space to park for catering, which falls on the locations manager. So sometimes they're really space restrictive, and drop off is a little bit more in line if you don't have a place to park, where you have to park the trucks a mile away and then bring catering. You still cook it from the truck and then drop it off where the catering is. So space plays a part. And then when you do drop off catering, it's really important that you have the right amount of people. Because, if
you order the right amount of people.
That you order the right amount of people. Because if you order,
From production side, if you tell me you want food for 100 people, and I deliver food for 100 people, and
you have 200 people show up.
200 people show up.
It's a disaster.
Or, people are taking food for 2 or 3 people, then that's a recipe for a problem. Yeah. So you have to, when production orders, the number of meals, they have to be conscious of the limitations that are associated with drop-off catering. So the pros are that it's easier on the budget, right? Some of the negatives are that you have to be very intentional about the number of meals you order. You're not going to be able to get custom plates like you would be able to get if you had an on-location team right there making them for you. The meals won't be made quite as last minute as they would have been if you had a crew there physically on location with you. But again, if your budget is such that you're looking for an alternative, you're still going to get a really good meal, and it's going to be delivered by a company that is familiar with production's time schedules, all the hurdles that they have to deal with each day, and the time constraints about, the meal has to be delivered on time. They have to eat, a certain amount of time, and then they have to get back to work. So I could see that becoming a more used option going forward. Which again, just a reminder, it's already happening a lot of times with pre and post for production offices. So if you've got, at the beginning of your project, you probably have 5 people in the office, but as the weeks go by and you get closer to shooting, that number can sometimes get to 50 or 100 or even 150 on some really big projects. And those folks got to be catered to. So in the Atlanta market, currently, we can do that from our commissary at Trilith Studios, where we would make the meals, put them in insulated cabinets, deliver them to the site, and be able to execute those meals, all at a budget-friendly option.
A little bit I would say about that is when you have the standard truck and the crew out there, you can make the adjustment on how many people you serve. You can make the adjustment on what time and where you want it. When you do have the drop-off service, be intentional with your count, because you have to understand there is not a kitchen out there. And if you have anything specific as far as a meal for somebody, include that at that time, so that specific meal is made and brought to you at the same time as everything else is.
Yeah. So if you did have someone that was vegan or whatever, and as long as you communicate that with us, we could do it in drop off. So I guess sort of the moral of this, or the topic related to this podcast is, when you say the word film catering, that could mean a lot of different things, right? So we've already shared some of the options today, and the way you communicate what the expectation is from production side is, let's just talk about it before your job starts, and let's make sure we're checking the boxes that you need to get checked, so that your budget is accommodated to, and everybody gets fed in a great fashion, and they can enjoy their meal and get on with the actual business of making a movie. So if you listen to us today, we appreciate your time. Thanks for listening. We hope you found it informative, and we'll see you on the next one.